All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and do this second video too. This will take us through the next section. I'm not sure what it is for you guys where you're supposed to start because I'm looking at my book, not the PDF. But you've got that list. You can look at it. I'll tell you where we stop. It'll get us through about close to a third of the book. Not the book, this chapter. All right. So we're going to start out with where we left off. We left off with Montag finding his wife had tried to kill herself. He calls the emergency hospital, and we're going to pick up there. And to be honest with you, in a book that has several very disturbing scenes, for me personally, this takes the cake. It is a very disturbing scene, and it's one of the things this book is great at is, even though it was written, let's say, it's been about 60-something years now, nearly 70. But one of the things that is very, very telling in this is that Bradbury kind of knew human nature, and he knew what we were like, even back then. And for him to have nailed it the way he has, if he, and he died fairly recently, but if he was to look today at us, I mean, goodness, so many sections of this book, the bad parts, definitely come true today. And this would be one of the sections that I think, while we don't have this particular, like 100% like this, people's attitudes are just like this. Goodness, as I'm watching the news right now, I'm seeing this. Just the general apathy. I asked you guys about apathy in one of your questions, and none of you seem to know what it was. By the way, apathy is an attitude of just not caring. A lot of people are apathetic about things like school. You come, you do what you're supposed to, but you don't really enjoy it. You don't really want to do anything with it. You just do it because you have to. That's apathy. All right. So you want to see a great example of apathy? Very first part of this section. Okay. So what we have two technicians that come to help Montag with his wife. By the way, technicians is the right word. They're not doctors. They're not nurses. They're not first responders, really. They are mechanics. To be honest with you, they're mechanics that know how to work a machine, and what they have here is something that will pump Clarissa's stomach. Is basically what it is. More like today in modern, the way we would do it. Not so much the way they would have done back then, to be honest with you. So now Bradbury has some kind of poetic language in the first paragraph here. And he'll do this. He'll what we call wax poetic, which means he kind of wanders off into this deep thinking, which is weird because a lot of the book is very simple, and then you have these little passages that are pretty complex. And the very first, really, when they are, it's because they're these big paragraphs, okay, like that. I mean, you're in for it. So the kind of the important parts in here, he's talking about this machine. He says, did it drink of the darkness? Did it suck out all the poisons accumulated with the years? It fed in silence with an occasional sound of inner suffocation and blind searching. I mean, just that right there sounds really deep. Of course this machine doesn't do all of that stuff. But what he's pointing out, and this is something we have to think about today, is that you can deal with the physical elements of someone who's tried to kill themselves, like what they're doing with Mildred. But you fix that, there's still another problem. In fact, the main problem is still there. And that's what he's pointing out in that paragraph is that, great, they've saved her now. What next? All right. But here's a really bad part about this. And that is that the way these guys act about being there with someone who is, potentially going to die. They're standing there smoking cigarettes while they do it, which, guys, that just indicates that's apathy, all right? If you're going to sit there and if you went in to get checked for something and your doctor was sitting there smoking a cigarette or playing on his phone while you were in there, it would show that you don't care, and that's the way Montag feels. Let me give you some more details in here about this. It says, the operator stood smoking a cigarette. The other machine was working too. The other machine operated by an equally impersonal, notice that, impersonal fellow in non-stainable reddish-brown coveralls. Now, what do we know that's reddish-brown? Well, blood when it dries. So you've got this idea that, you don't want the guys that are working to save your loved one's life wearing something that makes you think of blood. It's just a bad idea. But they're wearing it because of it's efficient, because if they get blood on there, they don't have to rush home and change. So, again, pretty disturbing. Now, we're going to find out why that is in just a second, which is the most disturbing part. Listen to how they talk. The operator says, got to clean them out both ways, said the operator, standing over the silent woman. No use getting the stomach if you don't clean the blood. Leave that stuff in the blood, and the blood hits the brain like a mallet. Bang, a couple thousand times, and the brain just gives up, just quits. He's talking about it like nonchalant and completely facetiously, which Montag does not like, as he shouldn't. When they're done, they give him a bill. They say, that's $50. Now, don't let the money throw you. This was written in the 50s, so $50 then is a lot more than it is today. But the fact that they just hand him a bill, like, like again, like their mechanics is disturbing. Now, Montag says first, why don't you tell me if she'll be all right? And they say, sure, she'll be okay. We got all the mean stuff right here in the suitcase here. It can't get at her now. Of course, that's ironic because they don't really have all the mean stuff. The real problem is still there. Now here, this paragraph, and I'm going to show it to you like you've got the book, but right in here, you see all that highlighted? See all that? All right, this is a really important part, okay? And it really kind of sets the stage for their world. And remember, in the 50s, it wasn't quite like it is today, but this is not too far off from where we are, okay? Says, this is one of the operators talking. He says, we get these cases 9 or 10 a night. Got so many starting a few years ago, we had the special machines built. With the optical lens, of course, that was new. The rest is ancient. You don't need an MD. Case like this, all you need is 2 handymen. Clean up the problem in half an hour. Look, he started for the door. We got to go. Just had another call on the old ear thimble. 10 blocks from here. Someone else just jumped off the cap of a pillbox. Call us if you need us again. Keep her quiet. We got a contraceptive in her. She'll wake up hungry. So long. So many things in that paragraph should not have happened. First of all, you get the idea that they're having 9 or 10 suicide attempts a night. So much so that they had to create special equipment to deal with this. They say that you don't need a doctor, you just need a handyman, which obviously you do need a doctor. Maybe not a physical doctor, but you definitely need a psychiatrist for these people. When he mentions an ear thimble, it's just, this is one of the things that Bradbury predicted that was really cool. Bradbury talks about these little, it looks like basically like a little thimble that your parents might use when they're sewing, or maybe you, but they put it in their ear and they use it as a radio. I mean, it's earbuds. That's what he's talking about. And again, in the 50s, that wasn't a thing. I mean, they had headphones probably, but they're those big, clunky ones that weighed as much as you do. So, it was neat. Bradbury's got a lot of technology he kind of pinpointed in here. There's a reason why, Bradbury's really associated with a lot of technological things. There's the spot where I believe it's the Mars rover landed, is named after him. There's so many cool things about Bradbury. The Science Fiction Award is named after him. I mean, this guy's a major writer, and it's because of this book, okay? I mean, this is a very important book. Arguably, and it's not, in my opinion, arguable, I think it's the greatest book in American literature. I really do. I don't think there's a question in my opinion. Of course, you can have yours, but I think this is, all right? But he talks about the ear thimble. Sorry about my digression there. And then he says someone else just jumped off the cap of a pillbox. So he's like, we just have to look at how like slang-ish that is, like not even taking it seriously. But here's the part that if you're not a careful reader, you miss this. He says, call us if you need us again. All right. That's not anything that a doctor would tell someone about a situation like this. You don't put that in their mind that this is going to happen again. But guys, that's kind of the concern here with Mildred. It's going to depend on how she handles this, which we're about to see, and it's not good. All right. So Montag just kind of, there's a lot of him just kind of internalizing this. He makes this, again, a really kind of poetic section about saying there are too many of us, he thought. There are billions, and that's too many. So he goes just through this whole thing about how people are not connected anymore, which, again, back in that time period, a lot better than they are today. So then he points out that, if only they could switch out what's in her brain, not just what's in her blood. And again, that's pointing to the main problem here. All right. He goes outside and looks at Clarice's house and talks about how he wishes he could be in there just listen to them. He doesn't even want to talk. He just wants to know. Montag is convinced that there's something different about these people, and he wants to know what it is. The first chapter and a half, 2 chapters, is Montag trying to figure out what makes Clarice and her family and then Faber later different, and he really can't figure it out. All right, and we're going to see as he walks through that. If you will look, again, I don't think yours is broken. There's a section, and this is, again, one of those style choices Bradbury has that I just cannot get into. And here's the sentences. He says, 1 drop of rain, Clarice. Another drop, Mildred. A third, the uncle. A fourth, the fire tonight. 1 Clarice, 2 Mildred, 3 uncle, 4 fire, 1 Mildred. And then it goes on and on for the entire paragraph. Okay, these little short, choppy fragment sentences. He's going to do this several times in the book. I do not like it. All right. I'm not sure the purpose of it. I've had people tell me that it's supposed to be about, mimicking thought, but I don't like it at all. Right. Okay. The next morning, and I'm not going to kind of skip through these next 2 sections, but Mildred, he wakes up and Mildred's just in the kitchen making breakfast. Well, making machines make breakfast. She acts like nothing happened. She acts like absolutely nothing happened. He doesn't let it go. He brings it back up later, and again, she points out nothing happened. She's very adamant that she didn't try to kill herself. Nothing happened at the end. So obviously, she's not going to deal with it. She then goes to talking about the TVs. Now, this is a big part of this book. They have what they call wall TVs, and they're on each of the walls. The entire wall is TVs. Technology we definitely have today. We could do this. And they're designed not to be like the same TV on each wall, but it would be like surround as you go around all three. So Mildred's obsessed with TV. This is all she does. She's talking about one of her TV shows. We're going to see a lot of their TV shows. They're completely vapid meaning that they're empty. They're stupid. They don't really have much to them. She's all excited because she sent in box tops and gets to be part of the show where she gets to say, important lines like, yeah, stuff like that. Pretty ridiculous. But the important part of this section is where she starts talking to Montag about putting in a fourth wall. 3 of their walls in their living room are all TVs. She wants to put in the 4th one. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. For the most part, at any given time, you can see 3 walls. You can't see the 4th one. It's behind you. The uselessness of this is ridiculous. All right, she just wants it for no reason except to complete the set. All right, let me read this part to you. She says, it'll be even more fun when we can afford to have the 4th wall installed. How long you figure before we save up and get the 4th wall torn out and a 4th wall TV put in? It's only $2,000. Montag points out that's 1/3 of my yearly pay. Now, of course, they make more than that, inflation, but he's like, that's 1/3 of my pay. How are we going to do that? It's only $2,000, she replied, and I would think you'd consider me sometimes. If we had a 4th wall, why, it'd be just like this room wasn't ours at all, but all kinds of exotic people's rooms. We could do without a few things. Notice, she wants it to not be their room. She wants it to be someone else's. That's not a very loving statement. Kind of goes with the imagery we had back in the first section, the last video, where Montag's describing his bedroom as a tomb. That not a lot of love in that description. Montag points out we're already doing without a few things to pay for the 3rd wall. It was put in only 2 months ago. 2 months ago, she's already wanting more. I told you in the last video, Mildred's a kind of a terrible character, and we're about to get more of it. All right. On the way to work, Montag runs into Clarice again. They walk together. It's more development of the Clarice character. It's real good stuff. Make sure you've read it. The important part of this is that she does this little game with a dandelion, rubbing it under your chin, and it comes off like Montag is not in love with anybody, and he flips out. He gets upset, and the reason is he doesn't want to think that his relationship with his wife is not real. So he's having to face that. We're going to see the main pillars of this man's life collapse around his ears over this chapter. All right. Clarice points out she goes to a psychiatrist because people think she's weird because, she talks to people and doesn't care about TV and stuff. More on that later. Let's see. Okay, there's a really cool part. One of my favorite parts of the book. Clarice talks about the rain and how it tastes and stuff like that. And they just drop that in there, and then we go into a little bit more discussion about how Montag's different than the other firemen. But when Clarice leaves, this is such a cool line. It says that she ran off and left him standing there in the rain. Only after a long time did he move. And then, very slowly as he walked, he tilted his head back in the rain for just a few moments and opened his mouth. This is Montag thinking. He's really starting to think now, and he's starting to experience, and that's the key. You can think all you want. If you don't do anything with it, what's the point? All right? Okay, video's getting long. Let me kind of wrap up the end. We run into the Hound next. Read that section. The mechanical hound's terrifying. It's basically a spider dog, and I don't mean like Spider-Man, cool stuff. Like a dog with 8 legs that are robotic, and it kills things. It's programmed to track people by their, base. It's not DNA, but kind of like that. That's the best way to think about it. The people at the firehouse play games where they use it to kill animals and bet on it. This is a pretty disturbing section, okay? Very nightmare-inducing. Google images of the mechanical hound to give yourself not good. All right? We also find out that this hound and Montag have a weird relationship. I mean, this hound is programmed to look for things, but somehow it knows Montag and doesn't like him. All right? Which gives you some foreshadowing that something's up with Montag. I forgot to mention in the last video, we saw the first part of this when Montag first enters the house, and he sees He thinks about stuff behind a vent in his house. So that was our first bit of foreshadowing about something weird that's coming up. Second thing is that this Hound is suspicious of Montag. Remember, the Hound is supposed to hunt down people that have books. So something's up with Montag, all right? We also meet, I'll spoil it for you, our antagonist in this book, and that's Captain Beatty. Captain Beatty's the bad guy. All right, we're going to establish that pretty quick, but just some of the stuff he does here is kind of obvious. He laughs about Montag and the Hound. He doesn't think it's serious, but there's a really cool interaction between the two of them. And if you just read this on your own, you wouldn't think much about this. But Montag says this. He says, "What does the Hound think about down there at night? Is it coming alive on us, really? It makes me cold." Beatty says it doesn't think anything we don't want it to think. "That's sad," said Montag quietly, "because all we put into it is hunting and finding and killing. What a shame if that's all it'll ever know." Guys, this is a direct parallel to real life about how if we don't think for ourselves, then someone else is going to make us think what they want us to. And it's just going to be whatever the media or, whatever, social media, whatever it puts in your head is what you're going to think. And unless you learn to think for yourself, that stuff is going to be there and it's going to dominate, and it's not right a lot of the time. The way they're teaching in here is not right. And, Montag is finally thinking about it. The goal in this book is to get you to start thinking about it. It's great to listen to what people have to say. You should, no matter what they think. But then to think about it and process it and roll around your head and say, does this make sense? Do I agree with this really? Or am I just going along with it? So that's kind of the goal here. That's one of the things that Bradbury wanted. I mean, you constantly hear this book's about censorship. It's not. It's about thinking. It's about the importance of critical thinking. That's why I ask you guys the questions I do. You may not like answering them, but they're there to make you think and to try to get you to form your own opinions and to be able to support them. Because if not, other people will. The people who are smart enough will make you think what they want. And I want you to be able to think for yourselves. All right. All right, guys, I'm at 17 minutes. No clue if YouTube's going to let me load this. So I'm going to stop here. And I will add in the next section probably in the morning. All right. I hope you guys are having a great night. Talk to you later.